Hey folks, it's Swank Ivy and it's time for another Letters to an Asexual. This is number 96. I think this one's going to be on the short side. That's okay, so am I. I want to talk a little bit about the kind of comments asexual people tend to get that seem like they're positive or supportive, but actually are damaging in some way to the overall message of asexuality. And this will be an example of one. I received a message from someone about asexual people being a help for population control, which was framed as a good thing. So I will explain why comments like that, or comments like that we represent the next stage in human evolution or something like that, are not appropriate at the very least. And I've discussed similar issues before, but this is a new example of one with some nuances that I maybe haven't covered. So let's go there. This fella left this message. And just so you know, it's a little convoluted and I had a hard time really understanding what the person was going for, but this is how they framed it. You know, it happens frequently, like philosophers, to talk in vain, and no one listening to them, and finally they end up doing good things with people's mind in the long term. So do you preach your life philosophy. At the moment, they don't comprehend much of this mind revolution and still act like, but they will soon realize that this philosophy of yours will be very useful in the now and the future problems, like diseases, economy, ethics. It will solve even the breeding and population growth. And I puzzled out the part of this that I could understand what the person meant, and I said this: I'm glad you support this message, but just so you know, asexuality is not a philosophy or a political position. It's a sexual orientation. It doesn't solve problems of disease or economy or ethics or population control. Plenty of people who are asexual choose to have sex or reproduce, though those who don't are prevalent and should be respected. I just don't want anyone thinking asexuality is a stance on sex or behavior. It just means you're not sexually attracted to anyone. And the person responds: non-sexual orientation and overpopulation are reciprocal, cause and effect that affect thinking. People should always use logical thinking. I've seen people doing sex just for breeding, some other for money. Some do it like there isn't much in it. Some become animals when trying to make it literally. Their logic pales in the eyes of sex. I've met people who became poor because of it. Kings and queens sacrificed kingdoms, made wars for it, and spent riches and gold. Sex is the most wasteful thing in the world. I said this: I'm just trying to make it clear to you that being asexual does not mean you will not have children, and it should never be misrepresented as a method of population control. Plenty of gay people also have kids, and they are also, wrongly, labeled as helping with population control. Our orientation is not about babies. It is not a stance on babies. Please don't represent it as if it is. Whether reproduction fails to happen as a result of it is not relevant to asexuality's legitimacy. And while it is, of course, important to make sure you do not become obsessed with anything that ruins your life, I don't want asexuality to ever be held up as a moral position on sex, or a stance against it. Sex can ruin lives, so can money, so can power, but that is not a reason to stand up against those things. Asexuality is not a philosophy that is out to change other people's behavior or make them realize sex's destructive properties, because it is not a philosophy at all. And the person says this: sorry for grammar. I have to say I understand that asexuality is a state of being, but I was trying to take the discussion further in understanding asexuality. For example, asexuality signifies for me the opposite of animality, which is rationality raised from thinking and not acting without thinking. And here I have to say many people act animalical without thinking So I'm just going to read for you verbatim how I reacted to this when I was talking about it on my blog, because I don't want to rephrase everything I already said. So this is not a response to this person, this is just some reflection that I posted elsewhere. And I said, so this is where I started to feel pretty horrified. One of the worst things for our community is that people think our orientation constitutes us taking a stand against sex. And many of our detractors think we believe ourselves purer, more moral, more rational, or more evolved because we supposedly don't get caught up in sex. What's funny is people frequently take the opposite position too, that we're not evolved because our urges supposedly don't push us toward reproduction, or that we're not in touch with what makes us people. But in my experience, people can completely believe opposite things about us and still think they see evidence for it. I will not be seen supporting, giving a platform to, or agreeing with anyone who suggests asexual people represent rationality and thinking when contrasted with people who are sexually attracted to others. And my response to this person was this: you can have your own personal position if you like. The asexual community does not stand for rationality as some kind of foil to sexuality as irrationality, and that is all I'm going to say to you about it. I find that attitude offensive on behalf of people who value sexuality and absolutely do not believe it makes them animalistic, and I think it hurts the community's credibility to take that kind of position as well. People making bad choices involving sex doesn't make sex bad. So I blocked the person, mainly because I don't really want any more of that flavor of supposed support for asexuality to be given a platform on my channel, which was a relatively popular place at the time. And the person logged onto an alternate account so that they could have their say one more time and said this: "Sorry for the last comment if I offended you in any way, but censoring won't solve my way of thinking." So I said this: "No, your comments aren't offending me, and I am not trying to solve your way of thinking by blocking you. I told you that you were welcome to having your own beliefs about asexuality, but that I thought your attitude was dangerous, which is why I do not want more statements professing that attitude being posted on any of my videos. Asexuality is not a position against sex, and I do not want to provide a forum for what is essentially your hate speech against people who value sex. They are not animals or illogical because they value sex, and asexuality is not a position against them or their values. That is why I blocked you, not because I'm trying to solve your way of thinking. I learned early on that some people are beyond help." So the person ended up deleting all of their previous comments so that they could no longer be on display there, which was fine with me, but I'm used to these kinds of conversations and I know enough to record them and save them in case I want proof that they happened. So I did have a record of it. I want to elaborate just a little bit about this position. I have heard some ace people say that even though it's a pretty small minority of our community that is actively sex favorable for wanting sex for themselves, that there's kind of an imbalance with how much emphasis gets put on, yeah, but ace people can have sex, and then the mainstream picks up on that and says, oh, well, I mean, they're asexual, but they have sex still, and like most of us actually don't. I think it's important that we make room for the people who do, because, you know, that's a behavior, not an orientation, but it is true that to a lot of us, not having sex is an important part of how we express our orientation, and I have seen the argument that emphasizing sex favorability on behalf of asexual people has made way for that narrative that really didn't need any help, that we can have sex anyway, that our desires don't matter, that we're just like everyone else or whatever. And so I just want to make sure that the folks who watch my channel, especially the people who do identify as asexual and don't want to include sex in their lives, for yourself, you are perfectly legitimate as an ace person who does not value sex, has some feelings that sex is kind of, I mean, you might think it's icky, you might think it's bad. I mean, if I had to have sex, I would be like, yeah, that's icky and bad. I would feel that way about sex for myself. But I also don't feel like my dislike of onions should extend anywhere besides my plate. So if someone asked me to try onions And I explained respectfully to them that I have certainly had onions, or I've had onion-based things. I don't even like, the thought of eating an onion. And I would expect respect for that. I would understand if people were a little confused that I didn't like a food that they thought was really good, but I would expect them to leave me alone about it and not harass me about it or tell me that I obviously don't know what's good or try to trick me into eating an onion or lying to me about an onion being in something that I'm eating or something like that. I just don't like onions. And that does not make me turn up my nose at other people's plates or call them dirty onion eaters or something. Like I don't really even make jokes like that. I don't consider other people's preferences to be an imposition on mine. As long as they're fine with leaving me alone about mine, I think that it's kind of a neutral thing. And as long as nobody develops this into their agenda, that because I don't like it, I need to be made to like it because my life isn't complete, or I'm somehow going to find the same pleasure that they do, even though I have an aversion that they never had. It's just not their business, and I prefer my plate with no onions. I'm very happy with no onions. So I want to make it clear that people who are sex repulsed, I mean, I consider myself to be sex repulsed, and I'm not a sex negative person. I'm not grossed out by the idea of it. Within reason, I'm okay with sexual content in my media. Like that stuff, it doesn't bother me. It's okay if it bothers you. But ultimately, I do have a problem with it if you feel like your disgust should extend to being able to control other people's behavior or call them disgusting or suggest that they're animals. Like, we can criticize other people's poor choices with regard to relationships or sex or anything else that they're doing without saying, oh gosh, those sexual people, they're just animals and they're just sex sniffing hounds or something. It's just, that's not how I think of other people. It's extremely disrespectful. It's intentionally dehumanizing them. And it certainly doesn't do our community any favors if we try to draw ourselves up as some kind of elevated, logical, special population that's above everything. Because, I mean, we get enough of that. We get enough of people thinking that we have some kind of moral position on sex, or that we're trying to take it away from them, or that we're prudes, or whatever they want to label us. We can have both of those things. We can legitimately find sex gross for ourselves and or not want to come upon sexual content. We can legitimize that without delegitimizing the people who do find value in those things. And I think that's really important, especially if you want to have any allies ever. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not planning to start an asexual only society where there's no sex anywhere ever and consider it some kind of utopia. I mean, I'd visit an asexual club once in a while, but I'm not looking to reform society around an idea of purity that I've never internalized. I've never thought of people who value sex as less than me. The closest that I get to that is when I have seen the way that sex controls people or causes people to blame, people often blame their sexual urges for some poor choices that they've made, like just betraying someone or following an urge to have sex with someone when they don't actually plan to follow through with what was considered to be part of a package deal. Like someone saying, oh, well, I will only have sex with you if you have a relationship with me, and they say yeah, and then they don't actually follow through with the relationship because they just wanted to have the sex. Just those kinds of things are wrong for other reasons. It's not because sex itself is some kind of destructive power. It's the person who is doing it. and the thing itself is not a bad thing. So I think we need to keep that in mind while also making space for our community members who choose not to engage in it at all, to not make them feel pressured like that even if you're asexual you have to have sex anyway, or try sex or be open to sex. Like, you don't. But anyway, that's my position on that. And just to close the thought about my actual commenter, I want to say that this is one of several groups of comments that come across as support for the asexual community, but just like a lot of the detractors' positions, it is based on a misconception, and that doesn't help us even if it's positive on its face. So you'll see that a lot if you do a lot of activism, or if you're out to certain kinds of people. You will see the occasional positive comment, and sometimes it'll sound like you're so lucky to be asexual because you don't get distracted by these kinds of needs, or maybe you must get so much done because you don't have to deal with these kinds of relationships, or suggestions that we're pure, or that we're innocent, or that our lives are less complicated, or like this person is suggesting, we're somehow helping the greater good by not contributing to overpopulation, or that we're contributing to the greater good of a more enlightened species because we're not controlled by physicality or whatever. I mean, I like food, and that's pretty physical. You know, I'm not refusing to eat food or refusing to do other things that I think feel good. It's just I don't happen to be sexually attracted to other people, so I don't have any urges to follow on that. It's not a question of abstinence for me that functions as a sacrifice in my life. It's just not, and sometimes it's perceived that way, as if I have really strong self-control or mastery over my body, but it's just an urge I don't have, just like I am not hungry for onions. So I hope that makes sense. Feel free to share some of your other positive comments that you might have gotten from people that made you feel icky, and we can have some discussions about why. And until next time, thanks for watching.